Well, basically the assemblages of late Bronze Age pottery are made up by 3 different classes of vessel, and the vessels, shapes and sizes that will be familiar to us all to a certain extent, and they are jars, which we have a selection of in front of us, bowls, an example being here, and finally the smallest class, which is cups. And they are the principal categories of pot that are found in late Bronze Age assemblages. And they are further subdivided into coarsewares and finewares. So finewares are vessels which have finely made fabrics, so they have fine inclusions within the clay matrix of the pots, and also they usually go hand in hand with forms of surface treatment, such as burnishing or polishing. So a lot of these pots, these fineware pots, such as this fineware bowl, have a sort of very smooth, lustrous surface. And a lot of them would have been actually this kind of black colour here, or like this little fineware cup here, this sort of dark, shiny, sort of polished surface. The coarsewares, by contrast, usually have coarse inclusions within the clay matrix, and also they don't have that level of surface finish. They might be white, but essentially they're quite rough and abrasive. Some of them have very coarse flint in them that it's really quite distinctive. They give a sort of like biscuity finish almost on the exterior. But they create these sort of 6-fold categories of vessels, so jars, bowls and cups, finewares and coarsewares. And they have sort of visual, tactile and probably functional distinction between the different types, and they kind of make up the basic set of vessels that constitute late Bronze Age assemblages, and differentiate them from Middle Bronze Age ones, which are essentially made up of urn-shaped jars, which occur in just a very simple set of sizes. So they are the sort of building blocks of every late Bronze Age assemblage across southern Britain. Yeah, so there are definitely forms within the Moss Farm assemblage which would be familiar, as I say, throughout southern Britain, and in many respects, you can probably you could have gone from household to household, certainly in Eastern England, and you would have found similar sizes and shapes of pots to the ones in Moss Farm. Some of them are forms that we see time and time again. Like some of these ones in front of us are very familiar, and to a certain extent they could be found, in any part of Eastern England. I would, wouldn't be particularly unique to Moss Farm. That said, there are some really interesting idiosyncrasies in the form of the pots at Moss Farm, which make them quite distinctive, and that distinction is partly because of the way we see this assemblage as a sort of snapshot of a living set of vessels, or a household repertoire of vessels that we don't normally see in other archaeological contexts, where we actually get to see pots that are contemporary with one another in situ. But it's also a product of particular ways that people have made the pots, and it's sort of an expression of the way particular individual potters or small number of potters have learned to make pots on this theme of jars, bowls and cups. So they have, we recognise them as obviously post-Overimbri, late Bronze Age pots, but they have these kind of funny little quirks that are unique to the Moss Farm assemblage. Just to point out a couple of those, one would be the fineware bowls. It's these very, very sharp shoulders on these bowls here, and this sort of deep concave neck with these averted rims, very, very finely moulded, and they've got a very sharp internal neck bevel as well. Now, all of those features are not unique to Moss Farm, and we recognise them as diagnostic features of late Bronze Age pottery, but the way in which they're executed here is quite distinctive, and it becomes more so because we see repetition throughout the assemblage, so that you get the impression, and a very strong one, that these pots are being made by a very small number of individuals, and it may be that we're perhaps looking at the work of 1 or 2 potters, or perhaps potentially just an individual, or I think it's probably more likely given the number of households, there probably are more than one individual, but they've learned how to make pots in a very particular way. So there's that kind of school of understanding of how to work clay, how to mould pots, how to finish things, that creates this sense of uniformity between some of the styles of the fine ware bowl. So we see this kind of shape replicated, these kind of idiosyncrasies replicated across the vessels in the assemblage.